This is part 3 of Delegate Miyares' interview, which is the final part. Hope you enjoy! How is the House of Delegates different from the Senate?
Well, maybe I'm a little partial. I think it's run, even though we're a larger party, we're 100 instead of 40. I think we run it very efficiently. There's an enormous amount of direction provided by the committee chairs. Committee chairs do have a lot of influence. But I think what it is we are very, very efficient. We caucus every day. We have a very good idea of what's coming up on the calendar. So I think we deal with a lot more legislation just because you can imagine you have 100 members introducing bills instead of 40. So on the House side, we're dealing with a lot of legislation. But I think the big thing is enormous amount of work's done at the subcommittee and committee level before you even get to the floor. And I think that's where the House does a really good job working through the legislation.
Is the Speaker of the House a delegate? Like, do they get to vote?
Yes, they do. They can choose not to vote, but they do. And the Speaker of the House, I often like to point out, is the second most powerful position in state government. Most people don't realize that. But the Speaker of the House, so in the Senate, the clerk of the Senate, Susan Shard, determines where bills go and which committees bills go to. The Senate Majority Leader does not. It's literally the clerk. In our legislative body, that job is not the clerk's job. The Speaker decides each and every piece of legislation where that bill goes, and the Speaker also has an enormous amount of power of when that bill is actually brought up on the floor for a vote. So there's an enormous amount of influence on legislation the Speaker of the House does, and I know I'm partial. I think Speaker Cox does a very good job, a very even-handed approach to the position, and I commend him for the work he's done.
What is your favorite thing about being a delegate?
Probably what I described, being able to serve, take ideas that people tell me and try to advance them, and I think probably just trying to help people and use my judgment. That's probably the most satisfying thing.
Do you have any interest in being in any other political position in the future?
I get asked that a lot. I have a very young family, and the one thing I love about being a delegate is I love being able to come home and see my girls. And I can't imagine another office right now because I like being able to be home. And unfortunately, a lot of these other offices, be it Congress and others, it requires you to be away from home. And I love being a dad. I try to get home at least one night a week. I can't always, but at least one night a week when I'm up here. But that's probably anything I do legislatively. It does not matter as far as the legacy of my kids. I've always kind of felt that in my bones. And the most important title I have is not being a delegate. The most important title I have is being called daddy. And to me, that's the priority that I have to keep in my life.
What is your job outside of being a delegate?
I'm an attorney. Don't hold that against me, but I decided the world was in desperate need of another lawyer, so went off to William & Mary for law school. And so now primarily I have a private practice. I mainly do small business litigation and real estate law, some landlord-tenant work as well. And I'm at Hanger Law, so there's about 7 attorneys, and we have office in Newport News, Trinity Beach, and Chesapeake. So the attorneys at my firm are very understanding. When I'm up here, they work with me, where sometimes I can't appear in court, and they will pick up the slack for me. So I'm very appreciative of the people that I work with being so understanding of the demands, because I will tell you, this is called a part-time job, but as my legislative aide will attest, when I'm out of session, I'm back up here regularly for either committee or commission meetings. I'm the chairman of a poverty commission. I have a rule of thumb: any constituent wants to meet with me, I will meet with them. So there's a lot of meetings that I have. I would say there is a good chunk of my week when I'm back home still dedicated to just meeting constituent needs and attending legislative business. So it is not just the January, February, and a budget year's March that you're up here. It is a year-round. There's a lot of year-round demands as well.
Virginia is one of the only states that crams their sessions.
It is, believe it or not, because I've asked this. Why do we look at 3,000 bills in just essentially 45 or 60 days? And it dates back to actually colonial times, where there was the only time that if most of these members were farmers. It's the only time they really couldn't do anything at their homestead because the ground was too cold. So as when I asked that question of a member when I got up here, I was curious. And I want to be clear, I'm happy I can get home. I'm not up here 6 months out of the year, say in Pennsylvania. They said, well, this is the way it's been since Mr. Jefferson's time, and why should we change it? So, and Mr. Jefferson, you know, was a former governor, so I thought that was kind of a funny answer when I got up here. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for speaking to me
Thank
today.
you. Serving is a lot. It's a lot to juggle, but it's also rewarding as well. All right. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Drew.
much.
Appreciate it.
Hope you enjoyed part 3, which is the final part of Delegate Miyares' interview. Also, thank you so much, Miranda Lewis, for filming this segment.